Good evening, I'm Dr. Will Nutland, the co-founder of Prepster and the Love Tank. It's so great to have you back again this evening. I'm joined by my friend and colleague Matteo from the UK Health Security Agency. Matteo, it's great to have you back on.
Thanks, Will. I'm Matteo Prohaska. I'm a consultant scientist with the UK Health Security Agency and really pleased to be here again with you, Will.
Thank you. Matteo, this is community panel on monkeypox number 3 that we've done. It feels like, well, it was probably about 6 weeks ago when we were last together. It feels like yesterday, but I know we're both stuck in this very, very strange time warp. Thank you for all of the folks who have joined us today to be join in and be part of this panel. Just wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. You might be watching this live right now, either on Facebook or YouTube, but we are recording it and it will go up onto those channels after tonight. So please be aware that if you are making comments, if any of the comments that you're making on Facebook and YouTube may be able to be seen and accessed publicly, including by members of the media. If you are from the media tonight, it's great to have you here, but we do ask you once again to please honestly report both what Matteo and I and our guests say. And if you are joining us tonight because the media have reported on something that we're saying, we do invite you to watch the whole of tonight's event so that you get a really clear sense of what we've been talking about, rather than maybe one little snippet that a reporter or a journalist has decided to report upon. Please, as with all of these events, we invite you or we ask you to be kind and respectful. If you are not, if you are homophobic, racist, transphobic, or any of the other things that go against the ethos of our organizations, we will just remove you. And also, this is not, please folks, a space for conspiracy theories. There's lots of other spaces where you can go and talk about whether monkeypox is all to do with Bill Gates or 5G. So throughout this evening's conversation, we are going to be putting in little banners at the bottom of the chat so that you understand some of the places where you can go for more sources of information. And some of that information comes from my organization, the Love Tank. Some of that comes from organizations like Terence Higgins Trust or the UKHSA. And if you're also joining us, Matteo and I are in London. If you're joining us from other parts of the world and you want to add into the chat function some of the other sources of information that you might be using, we would really love for you to do that. So, Matteo, we're going to be talking primarily about vaccinations over the next 50 to 60 minutes. Hopefully we're not going to go over in an hour. I want to say one thing that we've been saying right from the start in these conversations that we've been having, that we want to acknowledge that this is a rapidly changing situation. Even things we were talking about 6 or 7 weeks ago, information is changing, our knowledge is changing, policy is changing. So this is a really rapid changing situation. So we do invite people to keep up to date with lots of those sources of information that's available to all of us. And I know you and I both say this at the start and at the end of each of these sessions. We really want to salute and honor all of the fantastic work in response to this, including from your colleagues at UKHSA, from my colleagues in the voluntary sector, from the people who commission and provide the monkeypox response, but also especially to those frontline sexual health service staff who are really, really working in the most extreme circumstances to care for people who've been diagnosed with monkeypox, but also now taking a lead on the vaccine program. So I know that both of us would want to acknowledge that massive amount of work that is happening. So, Matteo, we are going to be talking about vaccination for most of the part of tonight. But actually, we're going to slip in our first guest tonight. Haroon is despite being one of my close neighbours, Haroon and I have only ever met online. Haroon, we jokingly is referring to as the poster boy of monkeypox. Haroon, we want to thank you and congratulate you for really being very open and public about your experience of being diagnosed with monkeypox very recently. I'm going to add you to the stream now so that you can join us. and remember to come off mute when we bring you on. Haroon, you obviously didn't receive the monkeypox vaccine, but I'm sorry, there's now a car chase going on outside our street. Haroon, I'd love us just for a few moments for you to describe what it's been like in your response about talking so openly about being diagnosed with monkeypox. What's been the response since you've been this open?
Thanks, Will, actually, for this opportunity. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm very happy to share my experience as well. So when I decided to go out in public with my monkeypox diagnosis, I did it because in my first times I was hiding my lesions, and when I was sharing the post, then I kind of thought that we had this very similar process with HIV years ago, and we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything with monkeypox at some level right now, and it was very scary for me. And I know how peer support and how lived experiences are important to empower and to help others to understand. That's why I wanted to put it out there, and I'm glad I did. And so many relevant responses or questions, not only with monkeypox, but also with HIV and other sexual health conditions as well. So I am glad that I did it. And obviously, I tell everywhere that community, because I don't have a family here, and I didn't have any friends around me when I had it. And community really helped me to move forward. The responses, the positive responses, and to support from everybody, and everybody's willingness to hear it and sharing the journey with me was really, really good to see. And I just, the belief in humanity really restored, my trust in humanity really restored once again, especially in our community. And of course, and it also helped me to heal much better. And I just wanted to do more and more, because I realized that people were more open to experience and what was happening. And my aim wasn't scare anyone. I just wanted to give a message to everybody that we don't know who is getting it as severe as I did. And I am known as someone who is being healthy as pig, as you say. And I had a really severe case. And we don't know who's, that was my purpose, to tell everyone, just, be mindful, be considerate, look out for each other.
So you might be as healthy as a pig, but when you came out of your isolation, and I know lots of us were following this story, what was the response to kind of your direct peers, the people around you, about meeting up and kind of socializing again? And even even as maybe you started going back on the apps and stuff like that,
yeah.
What kind of response have you had from people?
Well, at the beginning, obviously, the responses were more like asking questions and trying to understand what it is. But I really didn't expect, in the end, I may face some kind of hesitation from people. It is understandable, but it is also, I am a man of science. I trust what my doctors or what scientists say. And I was told that it was okay and it was safe to finish my isolation. My scabs, my scars were healed. And two different clinics, both my hospital and my sexual health clinic, told me that it was safe to end my isolation. And obviously, I was after a month in in this situation and in the hospital. I was just dying to meet some people, but many of my friends, they were really hesitant, because there's not clear information about, also that we don't have enough scientific data as well. Let's admit it, about the transmission, about how long it is. And I didn't want to risk anyone as well. So they didn't want to meet. They were a little bit, are you sure you are okay? Even today, I've been to office for the first time, and a couple of friends were even joking, saying that, so are you sure you are safe? So I understand the hesitation is completely normal. It is the same with COVID as well. But I was like saying, I shared you, my doctor said it was okay. Why would I risk, after having it so severe? Why would I risk someone else by just, going out there anyway? It was a little bit hurtful, but I also understand where it is coming from, which is lack of knowledge. So I can't really, go angry or be angry about it. So,
and coming on and joining us tonight is also going to help, hopefully, people who might share some of those perspectives and that fears some of your friends and peers have had. Maybe your sharing that story will help people to understand how it feels to have been shut away for almost 4 weeks and then suddenly to face another level of rejection. And hopefully that'll be a learning experience for all of us about when someone tells us that they've had monkeypox or they have monkeypox, maybe it helps us think about how we respond.
It is, I think, it is very similar on the dating apps right now. Of course, I'm single, so I'm on the dating apps, and then sometimes they recognize me, and of course, it happened all over the years with the HIV, isn't it? When I share my status with someone, people run away faster than Roadrunner, or they blocked me, or whatever they did, But it still happens, or sometimes they recognize me and the conversation suddenly goes over the experience I had, but they're still not willing to, meet. So first of all, like in the HIV, we are on treatment or we are getting help, or, for ourselves. I am not saying that I am healthy or I am recovered just to get out there and then to meet people. I am not on HIV treatment or undetectable just to be out there. I want to live a healthy life, first for myself. So just think that before putting this kind of barriers in between someone, whatever the conditions they had, they are getting healthy for themselves first before meeting you. So, I would like to put myself at first. So if you think from that perspective while responding to someone, I think that would be more helpful for you and for me, obviously. So, I'm not selfish to risk anyone's life. We are all humans and we live together. So why would I do that?
Arun, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you've had a really, really busy day and that you've been on another set of calls. So we're gonna say thank you. And thank you again for joining us. Good luck with everything else you're doing. And I owe you a coffee at the end of our speak really soon. We've got to put that right.
I hope so.
Arun,
thank you very much.
Yeah, see you soon. So Matteo, on to the kind of the main subject of the night. We're going to talk about COVID vaccines, and we'll both know, because we've been in almost back-to-back meetings talking about this for this week, if not for most of last week. We have a new England vaccine announcement that was announced in the last 36 hours. So it's just been announced a new 100,000 doses of vaccine have been procured and will be available in addition to the about 30,000 doses of vaccine that has already been procured. So we should see a real ramping up, hopefully, of the vaccine program in the coming days and weeks and months. I want to ask us to start with a kind of just help us each other to understand some kind of basic information about the vaccine. So in a really succinct layperson's term, can you help us understand what is the vaccine and what does it do?
Yes, of course. So I think before I go into the question, Will, I just want to put some of this vaccine strategy into context to explain where we are. You just you just referred to the announcement of an additional 100,000 vaccines being expected by September this year. But I just want to highlight that the outbreak was first identified in gay and bisexual men only 2 months ago. And I say only because if we contextualize it with other infections or other outbreaks we've had, it's quite a short time between the time where we initially identified the outbreak until we launched a vaccine strategy, and then our ability to procure and start delivering those vaccines to people. I understand that there's been frustrations within our community about the pace and the routes and the communication around delivery. But I just want to say that, especially this week, things are picking up. People are getting their vaccines, and we're starting to see an increase in coverage, which is absolutely fantastic. And these news about the increase in procurement are great because we now know we have continued supply to keep on delivering these vaccines to people at risk. So this is a very safe vaccine. It's not a vaccine that is being used for the first time. It is a vaccine that is very similar to the vaccine used for smallpox. The vaccine used for smallpox, which it's another infection caused also by a virus of the same family, has evolved with the years. We have not been really vaccinating actively for smallpox in Europe for a few decades now. It's a safe vaccine. It's a vaccine, however, that has not been proven to be necessarily used for monkeypox outbreak control with a large clinical trial or a huge amount of information supporting its use. So many of the questions related to their efficacy, the things about doses, how doses should be spaced, and whether a previous history of a smallpox vaccination should change your eligibility for being vaccinated. Like those questions we can answer based on scientific expertise and our best guess, but we don't have these really large trials or robust data to say this is exactly the answer, this is the exact value of vaccine efficacy that we know from this trial, right? So I just want to put that into context first to manage expectations of people hearing this event now in July 2022. Hopefully in a few months we'll have more information as well as people are picking up the vaccine.
So, Matteo, one of the questions that I've been asked in some of the training that I've been doing is that this is referred to as a live vaccine. And then when people hear about a live vaccine, it gives people concerns about whether they can then onwardly transmit the virus because they have live vaccine in their body. Can you help us understand that question a little bit more?
Yes, so this is not a vaccine that has a virus that can grow in your body. The vaccine has been modified, and that's why in the name of it, it's the word modified is there. So it's a vaccine based on a real virus. So, for example, when we talked about some of the vaccines to control COVID, we were talking about mRNA vaccines. These were vaccines that contained the genomic material, but did not have the full particle, the full virus. That's not the case for these vaccines. They do have a virus. It's not the monkeypox virus or the smallpox virus. It's the vaccinia virus, which is actually the virus that causes cowpox. So it's just a modified version of that virus that will not really affect humans, and it will not grow in your body. You cannot pass it on from the vaccine because you will not have a true infection from the vaccine. What the vaccine is doing is just telling your immune system, hey, this is what the virus will probably look like. So prepare yourself and mount a response so that one time that you're exposed to the virus, your body will quickly clear it and you won't be able to develop the infection or to pass it on to someone else.
Okay, so that absolutely helps me to understand that part. The other big question that I keep getting is how effective is the vaccine? And I know under the caveats that you just started with that we haven't had great big clinical trials. But if I'm offered a vaccine tomorrow night from my local clinic, how much protection should I expect? Do we know that?
Yes, I think it's important to contextualize things a bit better as well. So, for example, in COVID, how we talk about vaccine efficacy, vaccine effectiveness, depending on whether it's on a trial or on a program. But we mainly talk about a vaccine effectiveness tied to an outcome, right? So we talk about how a vaccine is this effective to protect you against mortality or hospitalization or just having symptoms. So the first thing is that we don't really have that granularity of information for the monkeypox vaccine. Well, for the vaccine we're using to control monkeypox, right? What we do know, and we're running with a number of around 85%. This number has been derived from studies looking at 2 doses, mostly in healthcare workers, in the context of smaller outbreaks. So it's a very different context that this wider targeted approach to vaccinate people who may be at risk regardless of known contacts, right? So it's very important that we know that we don't have an accurate value yet. Definitely, the approach that we're taking is that we're going to generate this evidence as we're offering the vaccine. Of course, there's always considerations when it comes to offering a vaccine where we don't have an absolute number and telling people this is the vaccine we're giving you. We don't have a number to come with for this vaccine, but that's being clearly stated to people who are being offered the vaccine. And actually we found, and these results as well, that there is a huge demand for the vaccine. People are really willing to take it because we know the vaccine works. We just don't have the exact number yet.
And that, again, that's really useful. I know from the outreach work that I was doing across the weekend as part of London Fetish Week, these were the kinds of questions that people were asking us. So, Matteo, I'm really glad you mentioned, you slipped in there the issue about a second dose, so efficacy when those healthcare workers received a double dose. because actually this is one of the questions that's already been asked in the chat. So let's address this now. So my understanding is that those of us who will be called forward to be offered vaccination in this first round are only going to be offered a single dose, at least for now, and that the policy looks like, given that there's a limited global supply of vaccine, it's better to offer a larger number of us one dose than a smaller half of us 2 doses. Is that the strategy that you also think is happening?
Absolutely, because we know that usually the way these vaccines work is that they have increased efficacy towards the most severe outcomes. So they will first decrease mortality, they will first decrease hospitalization rates. They might not be as good at decreasing symptoms, for example. And that's the way vaccines work in general, right? So usually with just one dose, you can get good protection for sometimes severe presentations. So for example, a strategy that is offering just one dose at the beginning to make sure that the vaccine is being delivered with equity, what it could do is prevent people from having very severe symptoms that lead them to hospitalization, but they may still develop some symptoms if they get exposed. That is preferable to just protecting 5% of people with full protection and allowing 95% of people to be at risk for hospitalization or more severe complications.
Yeah.
As you say, this is related to a global issue, not just an England only or UK only issue or Europe only issue. It's a global issue about supply. Of course, no one was prepared for a monkeypox outbreak in gay men, specifically with these characteristics. What we knew from monkeypox before was that chains of transmission in the community between people were quite short. This is the first time we're seeing this extent of sustained transmission in many countries in the world. And of course, we were not sitting as a global health community on a lot of vaccination for these orthopox viruses, because they have been successfully eradicated in the case of smallpox, which was the highest risk, and it's a human pox virus.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a global supply issue and there's an equity issue, and you know this for our work with PrEP and health promotion. It's so important that we reach everyone, right? And if we just offer double doses to everyone really fast, people who have barriers to healthcare, for example, might be left behind. And it's so important that we're being equitable in our delivery.
Absolutely, and that you'll have known from the meeting that we were both in this morning. This is an argument that the Love Tank is really, really clearly making. Yeah. It's not just about getting those 100,000 vaccines into as many arms as possible. You have to also have some processes that maybe go a little slower, but make sure that those people who won't be the first in line to come forward are also offered vaccine, maybe in community settings or in some of the places that they wouldn't ordinarily be comfortable going to. So,
sorry to add something. I was also looking at a question at the chat here. It's so important that people know that the fact that they are being given one dose yet now does not mean that they will never be offered a second dose. They will just be spaced out. Usually spacing out the doses is a good thing. Some people may feel like spacing the doses means that you're going to lose the benefit from the second one. And because they're spaced out, the vaccine scheme won't work. That's usually not the case for vaccines. We don't think this is going to be leading to a worse level of protection. So just bear that in mind, that one vaccine dose will still confer protection, and this won't be canceled if we delay the vaccination a bit better.
Okay. I'm going to ask you two quite specific and quite nerdy questions. And then when we've done that, we're actually going to bring in our second guest of the evening. And I know just as we were waiting to go live, this is one of the questions that Haroon brought up. So my first part one of this question is that for those of us who were either old enough and eligible to receive smallpox vaccination many years ago, or are from a country where smallpox vaccination was continued to be offered, do we have some level of protection, and should we move forward to be given vaccination if we're offered it? And then secondly, the question Haroon asked us at the start was, if I've had monkeypox, should I now also be offered vaccination? Should I take it up? And again, with the caveats that we still don't know, lots of this information is shifting and changing. Are you able to offer us a little bit of an insight on that?
Yes, of course. We know that usually these infections, the orthopox virus infections, confer what we think is lifelong immunity. That's usually the assumption. The way the smallpox eradication campaign happened was thinking that we didn't need boosters further down the line, in the same way that, for example, for COVID, we talk about boosters because immunity for that virus works differently. We were operating under the assumption that people who had smallpox vaccination a few decades ago would be protected for monkeypox. There have been a few instances in other countries in Europe, and this has been shared in webinars with ECDC and other sources as well, of people who have had the vaccination for smallpox and have developed monkeypox. These are anecdotal cases. We don't have a denominator to look at risks and say, oh, this is the risk, this is the protection. So we know it can happen. We don't know how often it happens. So at this stage, we're not telling people who are vaccinated with smallpox to stay home and not come forward. They are very much being included. And having the smallpox vaccination as a previous history is currently not an exclusion criteria to receive the vaccine. That's not the case. So people who have been vaccinated for smallpox should, of course, come forward and discuss this with their sexual health clinics, but don't think that you will be removed the opportunity of being vaccinated for a history of vaccination with smallpox, for smallpox. The other thing related to, for example, Harun's question, and I was so glad that he brought it forward as well, which is whether someone who has had recently an infection with monkeypox can develop monkeypox again. And again, this is one of the situations where we don't have enough data. We don't think it's likely that the risk of developing monkeypox immediately a few months or within the first couple of years of the first infection is high. We don't think that risk really exists in a level that is considerable. So it would not necessarily be recommended to vaccinate these people, among other things, because there's other people who may benefit much more from the vaccine at this stage, so such as people who have not had monkeypox. So I'm not saying that people who have had monkeypox right now will never be eligible for the vaccine. At some point further down the line, we may have evidence suggesting they need a booster, for example, but we don't know that yet.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. And I'm also going to give you a couple of minutes of breathing space now because I'm about to bring Sam in. So Sam, get ready to come in just 1 second. Before I bring Sam in, I also want to, Vanessa and Percy, I've seen both of your questions in there. In the chat, we will be coming on to both of those issues in just a couple of moments' time. So, so bear with us. Matteo and I wanted to include some voices tonight of other perspectives. You only got both of us for the last two seminars, webinars even. And tonight we wanted to invite someone along who has received the smallpox vaccination. So I'm really delighted to add Sam into tonight's conversation. Sam, it's great to have you here. Sam, tell us the circumstances behind how you were offered the vaccine. Tell us how it was to receive it. Did you have any side effects? Was it painful? We want to know the whole story.
All the dirty details, no problem. Thanks for having me. So yeah, my vaccine experience was actually very easy and straightforward. It was quite early days. So this is about towards the end of May. So kind of, news reporting about monkeypox has only really just kind of started circulating. It was all still quite early and a bit unknown, I think, for certainly me and a lot of my friendship circle. So I got a call to say that I'd been identified as a close contact of somebody who had tested positive for monkeypox, and that suddenly, makes things a bit real. It's actually happening. Somebody that has tested positive for it, and fortunately, I had no symptoms myself, and so I was eligible, they said, for the vaccine. And did I want to take up the opportunity to have one? Which I said yes, absolutely. And they booked me in very rapidly. It was the next day that I had an appointment booked at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital here in London. And again, the process was very simple. I had my appointment time. I had the place to go. It's very close to where I live, so I popped along, and it was interesting because it's probably one of the more unusual jabs I've ever had. The nurse who gave it to me explained the whole process in great detail, but what was different about it, I suppose, to other jabs that I've received in the past, was, as she explained it, the fact that it has to go into the fatty tissue rather than anywhere a bit more invasive or deep. So it's something very close to the surface, and it goes in the back of your arm. And it was really wonderfully explained to me before we went ahead with it. Absolutely every step of the way was covered really well. I'm lucky that I'm somebody who I don't really have a huge problem with needles, as long as I don't have to look at it. But I think even if I was somebody that had a problem or was a bit nervous about vaccines or jabs, I have to say, if it wasn't for the fact that I know it happened, I wouldn't have thought it had even gone in, because I didn't fear the thing, not even at the point of entry. And the nurse who was administering it for me, again, talked to me through the whole process, kind of sat behind me. So when she said it was all done and all finished, I didn't even know she'd started. So it was really, really simple. And we talked a lot afterwards about any potential side effects, just to make sure I knew what to look out for, and had kind of all that information. And obviously I had the leaflet to take away. I was quite lucky really that I didn't have any experience of any side effects. I thought I might have had like a small lump there for a day maybe afterwards, but after that, nothing at all, and no other adverse effect either. I don't want to tempt fate, but what I would say is that up till now, put it this way, the vaccine seems to have held out for me. In the last, how long has it been now? Almost 2 months since I had the vaccine. A number of my close friends, close acquaintances, other people that I've been in close contact with have also tested positive for monkeypox. Those are people that had not been vaccinated up to that point. So it's obviously not possible to tell one way or another, but I would certainly lean towards the possibility of the vaccine having given me a pretty healthy dose of protection there, given the number of people that I know, colleagues, friends, close acquaintances, people that I've met out and about, who have tested positive in recent weeks. And what's also been interesting for me is, as I've been talking to my friends, talking to people that I meet out and about, talking to colleagues about having had the vaccine, to echo something that was said earlier, the interest that people have in coming forward and having the vaccine is huge. And most people that I talk to who haven't yet had monkeypox, fortunately, but haven't had the vaccine either, are sort of say to me quite eagerly, how did you get it? How can I get it? How do I go about getting this for myself? And what's been interesting is the number of people that come forward and have said to me, "Oh, you're really lucky. I really want to get one. How can I get one?" But what's also been interesting is that some of those people are people who, I'm not a doctor. I'm not clinical in any way, shape, or form. But I would argue perhaps aren't actually very high risk. They're people in stable long-term relationships who don't have other sexual partners, who don't go out very often to clubs or bars or parties or things like that. But I suppose in a way it's quite good that the message is going out there for people to take this seriously, but equally it's making people kind of quite eager to get the vaccine, while perhaps some people really the risk for them is probably quite negligible, and there's other people who are probably quite high risk, who are putting themselves at risk still. And as you mentioned, the numbers of vaccines and things available earlier. So it's far be it from me to certainly not talk anybody out of getting it done, but I think what's been a good conversation that I've been having with some of my friends is thinking about what's your risk level, and thinking about actually if there is a certain number of vaccines available, is it at this point about prioritizing people who are at high risk, prioritizing people who maybe have health issues that could be exacerbated or so on. And I think people have been quite sensible about it, certainly since hearing about my experience and having that initial moment of real eagerness of wanting to have one themselves. And I've certainly not encountered anybody who has said that they wouldn't have it, or have any kind of hesitation or reticence or reluctance to come forward and have it themselves. So for me, I think I count myself extremely lucky. I think I was very fortunate in some ways, unfortunately off the back of somebody else's misfortune, which is very unfortunate, but I was lucky to get it when I did, and I'm really grateful that I did take the opportunity to have it.
Sam, thank you so much for coming and joining us and telling us about your what sounds like a pretty positive experience, and you've kind of highlighted this $6 million question about who we should be prioritizing for vaccine over the coming weeks. And I know it's going to be an argument that is fought very, very furiously. So Sam, we're going to let you go and enjoy your evening. Thank you so much for coming along.
You're very welcome.
Pleasure. to be talking with you, and see you very, very soon. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
So, Matteo, I'm gonna let's get into some of kind of maybe the more controversial political issues. I know that we've been talking about these for weeks, and I do want us to kind of slip into Vanessa's question again about the procurement plan. But just before we do that, I know again from the outreach I was doing across the weekend, from the work that we've been doing around community surveys, that there is a massive thirst for vaccination. Vaccination acceptability looks like it's very, very high. So if someone right now thinks that that they are at potential risk of monkeypox and want to be vaccinated, what should they do? What are the next steps? And again, I know a few people in the chat are asking these fairly similar questions. Percy's saying, I keep seeing GPs in the NHS saying they'll be call people when it's time, and saying that their first priority is gaming with many casual partners. But how are our GPs meant to know how we play and how many people we're playing with? So what should someone do? I
think I'm going to go a bit broader again. Sorry, maybe I'm going a lot off script today, but it's just like there's so many things I think are worth acknowledging. First is I'm really happy to be part of this community that has great attitudes towards prevention and vaccination. And that's because of the very real narrative that we're really good at protecting our sexual health, because we've experienced a number of infections in the past and we're engaged with sexual health services. They're our go-to place. Many gay men I know go to their sexual health services much more often than they would even go to their GP. Sometimes they don't even register to the GP, but just go to the sexual health service because that's how their need feels like. And I understand that after 2 summers, has it been 2 summers of COVID and us balancing our behavior versus risk of infection, this summer felt like the summer where we could let loose and maybe change our behavior back to what we want to do and prioritize pleasure, right? And it's been really difficult for many of my friends who have had to change their behavior once again because they're scared of acquiring an infection that can be quite painful and can be stigmatizing and can make you be locked at home for 3 weeks in the middle of a heat wave. You know, there's these other elements of how this infection is placed in our life that make it an infection that we really don't want to have. And that's why the vaccine is such an attractive option, which takes me to the question, which is about vaccine implementation. How are we delivering a vaccine that is really good, that people want, but in a way that is ethical and sustainable, right? And the truth is that because of the way sexual health services are commissioned, many of the decisions about how to implement the vaccination strategy locally are being determined locally. And this happens at the trust level, usually. So some of the questions we were having were related at things like, why is Guy's and St. Thomas's sending me a message to ask me about my vaccination? How does my GP know how I play? The truth is that data and information that you share in sexual health services is not being shared outside sexual health services, but usually it's the trust who has the list of people who need to be contacted and who's allowing for the distribution. But this is being done by the sexual health service that just operates within the trust. So it's not that your data or your personal information about your sexual health is escaping sexual health services. That's very much protected, and it's been our #1 priority as we were evolving in the incident, in the outbreak response, to make sure that we were protecting the good relationship that gay and bisexual men have with sexual health services. Of course, there is a need to prioritize, and prioritization is tied to risk, and risk is tied to behavior. So we need to try to give the vaccine to the people who are having the most sex, with the most amount of people who may have monkeypox. And because of the data that we have been collating from questionnaires, from all the outbreak response, all the things we have been doing, working long nights and making sure that we have the right epidemiological data, we know that many people who are getting monkeypox from having group sex, for going cruising, from going to private sex parties, or to dark rooms or back rooms or saunas. So sometimes sexual health services cannot measure that routinely. We are not collecting that information of where you go, but we can proxy that. We can proxy your behavior through information that we collect through your sexual health screens, for example. So if you have had an STI in the previous year, if you have said that you have many sex partners, if you are on PrEP and probably also with STI diagnosis, your local sexual health clinic is looking at all that data together, looking at the people who go to the clinic and saying, I have these thousands of people who could be vaccinated. Who am I going to vaccinate first? And they're making decisions, and they are fairly homogeneous across the country, guided by the vaccine strategy on who should be being called first. So part of the reason why people have not been actively recalled to sexual health services saying every gay man in London or in Manchester or Brighton come forward and come to the sexual health clinic to be vaccinated is because we're trying to make sure that we're reaching out to people at increased need first. That is a challenge. It's not always perfect, but it's maybe similar to the COVID vaccine strategy or the vaccine program. You know how we were including first people who were over 80 years old and then over 70, and we were based on all of our different age ranges waiting for the threshold to move and to reach to us, right? So it's similar to that. We're trying to reach those people who are at increased risk of acquiring the infection. The way this infection is being transmitted, not only in the UK, but in Europe, even in South America now, North America, Australia, is in very interconnected sexual networks of gay and bisexual men. Of course, monkeypox can be transmitted in other ways, but most of the cases we're seeing so far are in gay and bi men. We were looking at the data recently, and we had a handful of cases in female or children. So it's really about putting the vaccine in the arms of people who will develop the infection, and it makes more sense to prioritize people who are at increased risk.
And Matteo, I've just put this comment in, or rather this question in the box, because I think you've just answered that. The data, certainly the UK data right now, absolutely is pointing that the vast majority of diagnoses of monkeypox are being diagnosed firstly in men who have sex with men, in those sexual networks that you've just described. And it does absolutely look like the transmission routes are via sexual interactions and not through other, not through sharing towels or not through door handles, not those other kinds of ways that we've been talking about. And also, just so that we don't lose this, because Owen has asked a really important question. Yes, Owen, it does mean that it would be your sexual health clinic, rather than your out of London GP that contacts you, your GP. So right now, those vaccinations are not being offered through GPs.
And I just want to highlight something else. And I am saying I'm always in this difficult role because I am an epidemiologist working for our government, but also a member of the gay community, right? In the HIV/AIDS response in the 80s, in the 90s, so many things were done via word of mouth, via sharing with our community what's working. So of course, you can wait for your local sexual health clinic to invite you to come forward, but also talk to your friends, see how they're getting their vaccination. It's not that you should try to bypass the system. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes specific clinics may be popping up a few slots for people who walk in over the weekend. And it might just happen in one clinic in London because that's what the clinic is trying to do. Maybe people are not showing up to their appointments as much, or people are canceling because they're traveling. So sometimes windows of opportunity open. So do try to have a conversation with your peers, with other people in your community to see, hey, how did you get your vaccine? How did you do it? Because you may be able to get an earlier vaccine if you share that information with your friends.
And Matteo, we've already discussed again today that there's some confusion and some frustration because this is not similar to the way that the COVID vaccination program was rolled out, where there was a central place where you could register your details and then you had a range of options you could choose from. And that means that because of what you described, because this is being generated by local funding via our local sexual health clinics, what you might see in Southeast London might be completely different from what you see in Northeast London. What you see in London might be completely different from what you see in Manchester. So just because your mate who lives on the other side of the country has told you that he got his vaccine in a particular way, that doesn't mean to be necessarily be the way that's how you'll receive your vaccine. So I really like this idea of us communicating between us about sharing tips about I've just heard that there's 100 vaccine slots being made available tonight at this place. Let's go there. That I know that's really frustrating if we're the person who misses out on that information. But believe me, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to really think about different ways of service provision, including pop-ups, including vaccination in some of these very places where we know where guys are meeting for sex. So Matteo, I'm really acutely aware that we only have about 15 minutes left, and I do want us to shoot back up to Vanessa's issue. And Vanessa is asking us, hi Vanessa, it's great to see you. What's the plan? Vanessa, you're saying that you're concerned that there won't be enough political willpower. Vanessa, I want to share that concern, but I also want to, as a result, if I had been in your shoes a week ago, I would have also been really, really concerned. I want to alleviate some of that concern, because some of you will have seen a joint consensus statement that came out from 8 or 9 organizations last week. Prepster was one of the signatories of that, and that's now been signed by more and more people. And that was really a call to action. It was a call to action. It wasn't saying that we didn't think the work wasn't happening, but what we were saying is that we don't know about that work. That's not being communicated to us. So I was one of those people who yesterday got the opportunity for an hour-long meeting with Matteo's very, very top boss, so Jenny Harries, who's the head of UKHSA. And Jenny was really open to understanding our concerns. And our concerns were, particularly those of us who have lived through the early days of the HIV epidemic, that if you don't communicate a plan to us, we assume the worst. We assume that there is no plan. We assume that there is no more vaccine being procured. But actually what Jenny was able to explain to us was that actually under current vaccine procurement provision, the UKHSA were not able to share some of that information with us. And I think we've moved forward. We found new ways of communicating. And I certainly came out of yesterday's meeting feeling that there had been a breakthrough and some new trust that was built between a lot of those key players, including community members, that I do now understand that there is a procurement plan in place. And that procurement plan might not, the granularity of that procurement plan may not be able to be shared publicly, but we also reassured Jenny and her colleagues that we will be holding her feet to the fire if we start hearing of vaccine running out very, very quickly. But I also want to paint this also within the picture of, as Matteo has already explained, that it wasn't like there's millions of vials of vaccine slopping around sitting in a warehouse. The one manufacturer has massively had to gear up provision. And we are really clear with UKHSA, as we were in yesterday's meeting, that we do expect to hear about what's the next plan. Those of us who formed that consensus statement, we think that UKHSA in England need to be procuring at least double the amount of vaccine that they have currently procured. And we will continue to work with colleagues to really make sure that those procurement plans are transparent and are being put into place. I actually think, Vanessa, the challenge now is not vaccine procurement. I think actually the challenge is getting the vaccine that is either currently available or procured into the arms of those of us who most need it. And herein lies, I think, the biggest challenge that we have. Our sexual health services that have been charged with providing this service have just dealt with COVID and are dealing with pregnancy mutation and are dealing, because they are funded, as Matteo has said, through our local authority public health services, through a decade of underfunding. And I'm not going to go on a political rant, but austerity, along with the massive reorganisation of the NHS that happened in 2012, along with consistent underfunding of sexual health and public health services, have left our sexual health services absolutely struggling. And what Monkeypox has done is really shone a light on how these services are really struggling. And now we're asking as frontline service staff to start delivering 100,000 vaccines into the arms of people in a very, very short period of time. So my call is we absolutely have to start asking UKHSA and NHS England to put pressure on the government ministers, the Department of Health and Social Care, to stump up new funding, even if this is just emergency funding for the time being, to get vaccine into people's arms, and then to come back and work out how absolutely screwed our current funding models are. So my colleagues from Bash and Beaver, if you're listening in, you must know that there are so many of us who are championing the cause and making sure that these services cannot continue to be the poor relation that they've been in our sexual health, our public health services for the last decade or two. So please, folks, there will be more calls for kind of political commitment from all of us on this. And I can probably say much more on this than Matteo is able to. But Matteo, you're also a community member, and I know that you also feel very, very strongly about these issues. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I share some frustrations related to what we can deliver. I think I agree with your comment. The issue is no longer just about supply. We anticipate that we will have 150,000 vaccinated doses by the end of September, considering what we already have. So the large amount of the supply issue has been sorted, but now we have different challenges which are related to the delivery of it. How can we deliver this large vaccination strategy at the same time that we are delivering PrEP, that we're doing STI testing, HIV care and testing, and many other interventions, including reproductive health as well, that is often co-located in these services. It's not that these services, to begin with, had a lot of capacity or room to accommodate monkeypox. They were already doing a lot. So it's about implementing a delivery approach that also allows systems to continue to operate and address a number of other problems that affect sexual and reproductive health. And I think your call to action is in that sense very, very welcome. And it's part of the legacy of our community and how we have addressed other infections and other problems in the past. I completely acknowledge that silence can often be interpreted as inaction, but it's been frustrating from the inside to know that so much action was happening, but maybe silence was more related to uncertainty. It's really tricky to backpedal on a message when something changes. So communicating uncertainty is often a challenge, and sometimes silence is the approach taken. But that's not to say that communication needs to happen in order to manage expectations and to work together as a sector. And I think that's definitely an outcome of the call to action. It's our understanding that those conversations need to happen, and they are happening even now.
And so we have a question that I will partly respond to again to just give you a second or two of breathing space, Matteo. So great question. How do we do outreach to reach those communities that may not be known to sexual health services? Well, we're doing that, and we've already started to do that. So some of the outreach work that my team have been involved in, and our partners in the GMI partnership have been involved in across the last week or two, when we've been going into saunas, to sex on premises venues, to places where lots of these guys might need that. I'm not saying that the guys who go to those venues are not known to sexual health services, but we also know in some parts of London, particularly some parts of London where a sauna or a sex on premises venue might be close to a mainline train station, that it could be that those guys are having sex in London, but then are going maybe to other parts, either the suburbs of London or places like Norwich or Brighton or Birmingham or Bristol or wherever. And so we're able to outreach to some of those guys and talk to them about monkeypox symptoms, about the risks of monkeypox, and also to talk to those guys about vaccination. What I will say in response also to this is absolutely some of the feedback that we had across the weekend was, I don't need to know any more information about monkeypox. I don't need to know any more about the symptoms. What I need is a vaccine in my arm, and how are you going to help me get that? And we're hearing that really, really loud and clear. And again, I've been in a meeting this afternoon saying to some of my colleagues in the NHS and in UKHSA in London, I don't want to send my outreach workers back out unless we can either offer a vaccine there and then, or help that person into a referral to when they can get a vaccine. So for those people asking us questions about outreach, there's a lot going on. And if you are a service, if you are someone who's providing a vaccine service, please liaise with your local queer health organisation, because we do have tentacles that reach right out into lots of those communities that you might not currently be able to reach. Matteo. we have just a couple more minutes. I'm going to give you the chance to summarize and make any final words. What are the key things that you want people to hear about monkeypox or smallpox vaccination as we close this evening?
I want people to be reassured that even in the light of insufficient evidence to say this is the exact number of efficacy threshold for this one outcome or the other, which we have been used to navigating due to our recent experience with COVID and with getting vaccines for COVID. I think even in the light of that uncertainty, I want to salute people who are very much willing to take the vaccine, contacting the sexual health services and keeping things going. I also want to salute people who have been increasing caution and continue to be engaged, especially in the light of behavioral fatigue and everyone being really tired of navigating risks. I think vaccines are here. Vaccines are being implemented. Services are doing the best they can. Your sexual health clinic is doing the best they can to deliver the vaccine and prioritize the vaccine accordingly. And if some patience is needed, it's just because we're all working together as a community. I want people to know that the gay community, the bi community, the LGBT community is represented from within the organizations that serve society. So it's not an us versus them. It's about centering everything we're doing around us as a community and about our needs, about inequalities and the experiences we have shared and that make us a community, right? And helping every part of the system to work together to make sure that we're protecting people. That's the ultimate goal, is to protect people.
I couldn't have put that any better myself, Matteo. And again, if you're in tonight's session or if you're watching afterwards, please know that there are so many people who are pushing on so many levels to address not only this health issue, but so many other health and inequity issues as well. I know it's kind of my day job and it's Matteo's day job as well, but there are so many other people who are really, really coming in and giving their all. I want to pay tribute to clinicians. I was in a meeting this afternoon with clinicians who are so damn tired and would love a day off. And they're picking up the pieces, they're splashing cold water over their faces, and they're running vaccine clinics right the way across these weekends. So please, if you are going and getting a vaccine in the next week or two, please pay tribute to all of those people as you go in there. Please be patient, including the reception staff, including the cleaners, including the person who puts the jab in your arm. Maybe just acknowledge what they're going through as well. I'm not suggesting you buy them flowers and chocolates, although that's always a nice thing to do. And all those other people on the front line who are really, really doing their darndest. We would love to continue to have conversations with you if you would like to see more of these sessions happen. I know there are those of us who are really willing to do that. If you find these conversations helpful, you can give us feedback through our social media, and you can also email us at hello@prepster.info, so hello@prepster.info. And thank you once again for trusting us with your time tonight and coming along and joining us. We're going to close. Take good care. If you're offered the vaccine, you hopefully now know more about